Okay, we are going to model what happens when someone uses nicotine. So up here I've got my nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, and when nicotine binds, it's an ionotropic receptor, so that means the gate opens, and in this case positive ions flow into the presynaptic neuron, which increases the voltage inside and makes it more likely to fire an action potential. If an action potential is fired, we've got a calcium channel that opens, calcium ions rush in, and that causes the vesicle to fuse with the presynaptic neuron, and dopamine in this case is released. Okay, dopamine will bind to the receptor, metabotropic receptor, and make the person feel really good, since this is in the reward center of the brain. Now, that's not the only thing nicotine does. It also, in another neuron, will the same process will happen where the nicotinic receptor will open upon binding nicotine. Positive ions rush in, action potential is fired, calcium rushes in, and now we've got a vesicle with adrenaline, which will bind to a metabotropic receptor and cause different changes, such as raising the person's heart rate. They have heightened senses, their breathing rate increases, they have a decreased ability to feel pain, they have increased strength and performance, dilated pupils, and they might feel jittery or nervous. So it's that fight or flight response. Oops, I don't know how that flew way over there. Okay, and in other neurons, there is acetylcholine in vesicles, and so same process up here, only this time acetylcholine is released and binds to a receptor, and acetylcholine will alter the neuron's excitability. It influences synaptic transmission. It has an influence in the synapse forming a connection. When serotonin is released into the synapse, this decreases the person's appetite and also increases or boosts their mood. When norepinephrine is released into the synapse and it binds, it has properties very similar to adrenaline. It dilates pupils, the bronchioles, increases the heart rate, constricts blood vessels. When glutamate is released and binds, we know that positive ions rush in and increase the odds that an action potential will fire in this next neuron. And another neurotransmitter that nicotine has an impact on is GABA. When GABA binds, the gate opens and negative ions rush in, and these negative ions make this neuron less likely to fire an action potential. This is inhibitory. It causes a calming effect. So nicotine does a lot of different things. And over time, the body will add more nicotinic receptors. Okay, so pretend like I'm just adding these, and they all don't work as well. Over time, they become desensitized, and so nicotine doesn't bind as well, and so these empty receptors are screaming for nicotine. This causes cravings, the person to feel angry, frustrated. They feel jumpy, restless. They may have difficulty sleeping. They'll feel anxious, depressed. They'll feel more hungry. And then also, after nicotine has been activating a receptor for a while, it doesn't stick around forever. A CYP2A6 enzyme will metabolize it and convert this into cotinine, and then the person will pee it out. And that only takes 1 to 2 hours for half of the nicotine to leave. That's a very relative to other chemicals, a short half-life, which means the person's going to want to use and use and use again to keep the good effects going.